Hello, scrufftards, degenerate, and freaks online. Welcome to the War Zone. I'm Scruffy, and this is Scruffy Tales. And we're gonna focus a bit on Ukraine's brilliant move in Kursk, whereby taking Russians by surprise, they may be able to isolate a section of the battlefield, securing a vital town in the process, and they also have the ability to move into another vital town, putting further pressure on the Russians. So we're going to take a look at that, and we will also take a look at some developments down in at around Pokrovsk, where Ukraine potentially has launched a counterattack to liberate a town right just outside of Pokrovsk. Right, starting off with Andrew Perpetua. This is the 7th, updated 14 hours ago, so might get an update tonight, would be my guess. But we're gonna stick with this, and what we can see is here Ukrainian tank with mine plow damaged, pushing out of Cherkasskaya Konopelka along this main road towards Ulanok. And we also have Ukrainian forces down here moving in these woods. And if we go back to the 6th, take a look, Russian shelling indicating Ukrainian positions as well. Ukrainian assault on the 6th here. And moving forward, we can see here they moved up along the windbreaks to forests following the road here. And like I said here. And if we move into, here we go, Mayakovsk 73. We can also see the Ukrainians pushing into these woods here and trying to push out here towards Ulanok. And they're also trying to reach the crossing here, railroad crossing, moving from the tactical pig farm. There are lots of pig farms all over the place, and well, they're never going to be an operational objective, but they will be important to hold. Reaching those operational objectives, so they have tactical importance, so they are tactical pig farms. But anyway, let's head on over to my map. Here we go. Where you go. Ukraine has had quite some successes in this area before this push. They managed to reclaim this town here, or village, Agronom, pushing Russia out of it. They also managed to, like I said, push Russia out of this part of Makhnovka. And then they had this big push here, of course. Since they are able to advance along this road here. So I had to throw a can. Where was I? Since Ukraine is quite clearly moving along this road here, I'm thinking they also have secured the lake. There are no Russians up here that can fire across the fields into the flanks of the vehicles here. But we don't know. That's why I have it as contested or an unknown. But I think this should be Ukrainian, since they are moving across here. Same thing here. They are moving down this road across these open fields into the small village of Fanazivka, and from here on they are assaulting east along this dirt track here. You can see it here. They're following that small dirt track into the woods, and it comes out here. You can see here it continues along the woods here. And since they are able to move across here, I'm thinking they have pushed into these woods as well. And where was I going with this? So Ukraine being where they are now, I think the primary objectives have been achieved. Cherkasskaya Konopelka and Fanazivka. I think these were the primary objectives, with Ulanok being the secondary objective or third objective after Fanazivka, if it was obtainable. Primary goals have been achieved, And it is quite interesting because take a look at Fanazivka. They are so close to the Pesel River. And I mean, it's not that far for them to push down here to basically isolate the Russians north of the Pesel River. Take a look, all of this here will be isolated. You have a bridge here, but I mean, that is a bottleneck, and Ukraine should potentially have line of sight from this big hill all the way over to the bridge itself. But anyway, with drones patrolling here, it's gonna be difficult for Russia to move trucks across the river to supply troops up here. There's a lot of open spaces where that the trucks need to manage to drive through to avoid getting hit by drones. So more or less, if they can push down here, having taken the roads up here and the towns up here, these woods here are more or less isolated, and the Russians' ability to maneuver in these marshes to reach these farms and threaten Krylovka will be heavily reduced. So I'm thinking that all of this right here is essentially cut off from Russian supplies and reinforcements. Sure, they can find a boat here and there and get across the Pesel, but you can't get volume, the volumes needed to support holding these woods. So potentially, no guarantees, but potentially we might see Ukraine pushing Russia out of this area here, forcing them south of the river Pesel. And which is important. It will deny Russia any chance of actually threatening Krylovka and cross the Sudzha River at this location, at this point in time at least. So very important, pushing down this way, getting close to the river Pesel, and by so doing more or less isolating the Russians over here. You need to apply pressure with drones on the bottleneck that is this one bridge. And then you can begin operations in slowly forcing the Russians out of this area in its entirety. So that is where the Ukrainians are at the moment. But we can see them pushing here east towards Ulyanok. We've seen them. They want to push east into this part here of Ulyanok. So they want Ulyanok, quite obviously. And if they grab Ulyanok, then they get close to, or then they can actually make use of these southward going roads leading to River Pesel, and then you have another bridge. Now this is, as you can see, quite a lot of open terrain. So a difficult approach once you leave the cover of the woods. But then you have the town of Borki south of the river. And if you take Borki, then you have basically almost isolated the Russians over here. A lot of open territory. The only way to resupply Plekovo on the front line is through Borki and through the terrain here where you have cover. So if Ukraine can take Ulyanok, they have the potential to push south. It's dangerous, absolutely, but it puts a lot of pressure on the Russians if Ulyanok falls. And especially if the Ukrainians can continue pushing down the forest here toward Krupets, for instance. It gives Ukraine a lot of options taking Ulyanok, pushing along the railway here and all the forest belts, or the woods here, like I said, towards, it's it's a real predicament for the Russians if Ulyanok falls. So we're probably going to see Ukraine trying to push in here for a day or two more, and Russia really needs to hold the line. Otherwise, it could become really dangerous for Russia on this southern part of the front line. But this initial push into Cherkasska, Konopelka, and Fanazivka, that is good enough. Even if Ukraine doesn't take Ulanok, they will be able to apply pressure on this part here, and in so doing, secure Kurilovka. Right, so moving on to Pokrovsk real quick here. Mayakovsk 73 and his map. And, still stuff going on at Kotlina. The Russians haven't really been able to push out, and we don't see much changes as well of Ukraine pushing in. So we're going to have to assume the fighting is still ongoing. But more interestingly is if we move down here to Pishchane, take a look what we see here. According to Mayakovsk 73, Ukraine has pushed into this part of the battlefield. These wide force belts that Russia had pushed into, and Ukraine has now been able to move out of Sverove and reclaim them. And there also might also be an attack from Ukraine out of Sverove into Pishchane, to this industrial site here on the outskirts of this small town. We'll see if there's anything to that. But as you can see, you have activity here. And same thing if we move over to Androperpetua. Ukraine has done some attacks here. Russian Titan D is abandoned, and he has a Ukrainian attack marked, sort of indicating that Ukraine is trying to push into Pishchane and this factory area here. And if we take a look at the Ukraine control map, here you have that the piece of forest that Ukraine had pushed into, and here you have, right on the outskirts of Pishchane, on the 8th of February, that would be yesterday, or, whoa, yeah, we're across the midnight hour, okay. So that was from today when I started recording. Anyway, Russian FPV drone hits damaged Ukrainian MRAP, right here. And then down here, this is from the 5th of February, a couple of days past. Ukrainian MRAP hit by drone, showing a Ukrainian advance near Pishchane. So this has been ongoing for a couple of days. So if I kind of forgot I had the Ukraine control map. I usually double check this all the time. I haven't done so with the last couple of videos. My bad, Ukraine control map. You're doing an excellent job. So Ukraine, and this, let's see what this is. Russian position on the 7th. Russian soldier hit by Ukrainian FPV drone. Okay. So 3 or 4 days ago, we had Ukrainians down here, and yesterday, Ukraine is here. So they are quite clearly pushing out of Sverove into Pishchane and along the main street here, and potentially have their focus on this factory area here, whatever that is. So the situation here at Sverove and Pishchane, using my map, should look something like this maybe. This factory being contested, not sure who's in control, with Ukraine doing the pushing, and that's why we have the blue stripes within the marked off area here, and that would make, Russia can't control the wide open field, so they fall back down here. And up here, it's still very much unclear what's going on in Kotlina with all the mechanized assaults going on. And we have seen geolocated evidence that Ukraine has troops in this part of town engaging Russians and what have you. So this is the situation outside of Pokrovsk here at the moment. Ukraine appears to be attacking Kotlina. Russia is having trouble securing this factory here. They haven't been able to push out of this windbreak. And over here, it sure as hell looks like that for a couple of days now, Ukraine has been pushing into this part of the battlefield and continued into Pishchane, trying to secure a foothold in this factory here. And yeah, so Ukraine, they're on a roll at the moment, small scale, but significant nonetheless. But I guess maybe that is what happens when the enemy goes from armored vehicles to golf carts to scooters to donkeys, while you go from old school BMPs to Bradleys to CV90s, and now will receive state of the art CV90-35 NLs, as well as Lynx infantry fighting vehicles. Maybe that has something to do with it, and the fact that the enemy, they're salvaging artillery pieces from the 50s, and you receive state of the art self propelled guns like the Caesar, Panzerhaubitze, and the Archer. Maybe that has something to do with it. I don't know. Anyway, it's nice to see that Ukraine still has quite some fight left in them, and this ain't over. The Ukrainians are ready to fight, and they will take the fight to the enemy. With that said, gå på marsch, Ukraine, and give them hell.